Hey everyone, welcome back to the vlog. As you can see, we're in the gym. I feel like I play my best when I get a workout in before I go play, so we're gonna hit a quick push day and then we're gonna head to Parx. All right, that wraps up the workout, and I just wanted to talk to you guys for a few minutes about working out and, by extension, eating well and taking care of your body as it relates to poker. You know, you're sitting at the poker table 3, 4, 5, 6 hours in the day, or you're working a desk job. It could really take a toll on your body, so you need to take care of your body, which in turn will make you a better decision maker and keep you off tilt more at the tables. You know, if you're not on tilt as often, and you can pay attention and make better decisions, you'll really be able to increase your ROI and increase your win rate that way. So give it a try. It can't hurt. Even as simple as walking the dog or just getting outside and moving a little bit. So let me know what you guys think and see how it improves your game at the tables. Enough about this. Let's go try and run up a stack at Parx. Alright, let's get to some hand histories. This first hand I raised the button with 6, 7, 9, 10, single suited. We're four-handed here, waiting for some players to arrive. It's it's around 11 o'clock in the morning, so a little early for the game. So a pretty standard open here, and the small blind actually decides to bump it up to $30. The big blind and the cutoff all call. I obviously call in the button, having position and a pretty good connected hand, and you know, we go and see a flop. Flop's pretty good for my hand. It's 8 Jack Queen rainbow, so I flopped the nut straight, but I have no backup. It's checked to me, and I decide to bet $80, which is about 3/4 pot. I think this is pretty standard here. If someone had anything of substance, I think they would be betting in front of me. So I think it's pretty standard bet here. Only the small blind calls, and the other two players fold. Now, he started the hand with about $230, so I have a little less than a pot size bet behind. The turn is a 6 of diamonds, really putting a backdoor flush draw in there, but not changing too much other than that. Villain checks to me, and I decide to put them all in. You know, he can call me with 2 pairs and overpair and a straight draw or a wrap or something like that. So he ends up making the call, and my surprise, he's got a pretty loose hand. He turned a nut flush draw with just 1 pair, and he also turned, I guess, a gutter to the low end of the straight. Pretty loose call overall to call it off here, but I'll take this pot. All right, hand number 2 here, and I think this one's a pretty interesting one. I am in the big blind with about $550, $600 starting stack, and there's a limp. Under the gun +1 player raises to $10. Middle position calls, cutoff calls, small blind calls, I call, and the limper calls. So there's $50 in the pot, and we're off to see a flop. I have 6, 9, 10 jack double suited. So the flop comes pretty good for me. It's 6-6-8, giving me trips and a flush draw. I decided to check it over here. I have pretty much everything covered, so I'm not too worried about this. And the under the gun +1, the initial raiser, decided to put a bet out of $35. To my surprise, the middle position calls and the cutoff both call. I don't want to raise here and have to get it in against a hand with 6 ace or something like that, or against a full house already. So I actually just decide to call here and see what happens on the turn. The turn is a 4 spades, bringing in a straight draw. I decide to check it here, given that it's I'm almost positive someone else has a 6 or even 8-8 in this hand. I decide to check under the gun +1. The initial raiser checks. Middle position leads now, and he bets $100. I don't think he's doing this into the field with only a 6. Ace 6 would be the worst possible hand, but given the straight on the board, I'm pretty sure he's betting full house here. The cutoff decides to fold, and after some consideration, I decide to make a snug fold here. Reason being, I could always be behind a full house already, 6-8, and I'm drawing to 9 outs. If I am live and I do hit one of my outs, it's going to be very difficult for me to get paid. I'll either have to lead the river when the overcard hits, which looks very strong, or I will get raised against a hand like 8-8. So I decide to fold here and show my hand, and the middle position player does in fact show 8-8, and he complains for about 15 minutes how I could fold with just a 6 there. So I don't want to explain too much to him, given I'm going to be playing with him for a while, but I think this is a fairly good fold that most beginning pot limit Omaha players don't make. This third hand here there's a straddle on, and it's limped around to me in the cutoff with Jack 7-8 single suited. I think this is worth a limp. I am connected somewhat. I can set mine to try and set over set somebody. I don't think this is worth a raise, given that all the limpers, no one's really going to fold, and I think I want to get in cheap and try and make a huge hand here. So I limped around to the straddle, who actually decides to pot it to 36. All the limpers in front of me call, so I decide to call as well, given the pot odds. Fairly deep with most of the players, and I think this could go either way. It's probably a fold, but I'm in position, and I kind of wanted to just see a flop with this hand. So the flop is 6-6-4 with 2 diamonds, giving me a flush draw and an overpair of jacks. Given that there is about 5 or 6 players to the flop, it's almost assuredly someone has a 6 or a better flush draw than me, and they're not going to fold for 1 bet. It's checked around to me, and I decide to check it. Button also checks, so it checks through on this board, which I'm fairly surprised about. Turn is gin. It is a jack. So if anyone was solo playing a 6 or a weaker full house, they are in some pretty big trouble here, unless they have quads. So it's checked to the big blind, who actually decides to lead into the field for 150 into a pot of 180. folds to me. I don't think I have much of a decision here. If I raise, this looks super strong. I'm only raising full houses here, and if I had a hand like 6-jack, I would raise, but given I have the overfull and he's drawing almost assuredly dead, I decide to flat call here, given that he only has about $200 to $300 behind. So the river is a 3 of clubs, and he actually checks it over to me, which is surprising because at this point I just put him on a naked 6. And I could pot it here, but I think that's only going to get called by full house. And given that he checked the river, I don't think he has many full houses unless it's a weirdly played flop full house or 6-3 or 4's full. None of those should be calling too big of a river bet. So I decide to size down here and I bet 200 into the pot. He actually says, I think you have jacks full. He hems and haws for a minute or two and then slides out the call. I turn over my jacks full and he shows 6-4 for a flopped full house, and he laments how he should have just bet the flop. I think his check on the flop is fine, going for a check raise of anyone else with a 6, but he did give overpairs an opportunity to catch up. So anyway, we win a nice big pot there. All right, in this third hand, the straddle's on again, and it's folded around to me, and I open the cutoff with king, 9, 10, single suited, fairly standard open in the cutoff. I'm connected, I have a suit, I have kings, so it folds around to the person who straddled, which is the same player who just paid me off with when I had the jacks full against his flopped full house, and he decides to repot to $68, folds around to me, and I could go any one of 3 ways with this hand. I think 4 betting is pretty bad because he's really only going to do this with aces. Given I have a suit and I am connected, I decide on a call here. If I had just naked kings or a hand like king, 6-5, something like that, I think that's a pretty clear fold. But given I'm in position and I have some connectivity with a suit, I think it's okay to call here, also pretty deep. So I decided to give it a call, and the flop is pretty good for me. It's king of diamonds, queen of clubs, 10 of diamonds, and he decides to check over to me. I think if he had a straight here, he'd be betting, given his hands are most likely aces with some side cards, and I think if he had ace-jack, he would be betting outright here. So he checks over to me, and I decide to put out a bet of 90, which is about 3/4 pot. I think this bet sizing is fine. I can get called by diamonds. I can get called by aces with a gut shot. I can get called by sets of queens, sets of tens. It's hard for him to have kings up, but I want to win a big pot here, so I want to put a bet out now and protect my equity if he does have some kind of funky flush draw. So he decides to give it a call, and at this point I'm putting him on aces with the ace of diamonds, nut flush draw. The turn is a king giving me quads, and he checks again. It's very hard for him to call down here. I went back and forth on the sizing here. I think big sizing is automatically out of the question. So given that I have everything locked up, even queens full is going to be really hard to call me down here, given that I called a 3-bet pre-flop and I led on the flop and betting the turn. So I decide to slide a bet out of 100, which is about 1/3 pot, 1/3, 1/4 pot, and he pretty quickly folds. He says he has aces and nut flush draw. I could go and check here, but I think I want to be betting most of my hands. If I was bluffing, if I did have a straight, I think I would bet here too to try and deny diamonds. And I want to play for stacks, and I think the only way to do that is either let him catch up with a miracle ace on the river, or check it and let him bluff off. But I think betting is the way to go. This is a good hand to go bet with. Okay, in this fifth and final hand here, I have ace 7-7-9 suited to the ace, and it is a couple limpers and a raise. I decide to call the raise of 15. Handful of other players call as well, so there's 6 players to the flop, and the pot is $94. Flop, again, is good for me. It's checked over to me, and the flop is 8 of spades, 6 of spades, 2 of hearts, giving me the nut flush draw and an open-ended straight draw. I decide to bet pot here, which I think is a mistake. I should be betting about half pot, given that there's 6 players in the hand. I'm going to get the same action from all the strong hands, but the weaker hands, I want king high, queen high flush draws to come along. I want wraps to come along that I'm dominating. I think I should just be sizing down this and try and keep the weaker draws in. I do think a bet is in order 6-handed, though it wouldn't be the end of the world if I checked and it checked through, given I only have 1 pair of 7s. The main villain in the hand decides to pot it, and it comes around to me, and I have a couple of decisions here. I can fold. I think that's out of the question. I think my draws are too strong here. He's pretty much exclusively saying, hey, I have a set, or I have 2 pair and a flush draw, or I have 2 pair and a wrap. And my thinking was that I'm always live to the spades. If he has any set that is not 8s, I still have 7s as an out, and I also have the open-ended draw. So I decide to flick in I repot it and put him all in for the remainder. He calls. We decide to run it twice, which is fine. I leave it up to the opponent to let them do what they want to do. And the first run out is 9 of clubs, king of hearts, and the second run out is 2 of diamonds, ace of clubs. So I miss spades, board pairs on the second one. It's pretty bad for my hand. He does turn over 8-8-9-5 for top set and a gutter, and I lose a fairly big pot here. Luckily, I do end up on the day up a couple $100, up about $300, so not too bad of a session, and that'll wrap it up. Alright, I want to talk a little bit about that last hand. Some of you might think it's a slam dunk, jam, get it in. Some of you think it is a snap fold. He obviously has a set. And, some of you might say, oh, well, you only had 35-40% equity against his hand. And I just want to say you can't really think about it as his exact hand. You need to think about it as ranges and what his stack off range would be. So I put a couple different hands up here that possibly take the line he did, re-raising pre-flop and then stacking off, or re-raising on the flop and stacking off, and the equities against my hand. So given his exact hand, I have 38% equity against his hand, which is not quite enough to justify getting it in there. But as you can see here, this is the worst case scenario basically that I'm up against. Excluding giving him a flush draw and cherry picking cards to perfect hand. But look at a hand like the second one. If he had 6-6 ace king double suited for middle set, I actually have 45% equity here. So if he has a naked middle set, I think he's taking this line as well. And given that I have open-ended flush draw and could overset him, 45% is pretty good equity. Against top 2 pair and the same open-ended draw as me, I have 44% equity. Plenty to justify getting it in here. And very interestingly enough, look at this bottom hand. Full wrap, 5, 7, 9, 10 with spades covered. I think that's another hand that would get in. A full 13, 16 card wrap plus spades. We get it in here, hoping maybe I have a set or 2 pair, given that I led out into the field. I have 70% equity against this hand that's stacking off against me. That's unbelievable. If you average these out, I have about 50% equity. I think that's plenty to justify getting it in here, given that the pot overlay and we have an SPR of about 4-ish, 4.5, 5 to start the hand, which is a fairly low SPR, stack to pot ratio to start the hand. So I think my play is fine getting it in. It just sucks that it happened to be against the worst possible hand. So there you go. Let me know in the comments below, guys, if you like this sort of hand analysis, if you want me to run equities, talk about different possible outcomes rather than the actual outcome that happened. I know it's hard to not be results oriented, but you have to think of poker as a broader picture and think about ranges of hands rather than exact hole cards versus your exact hole cards. If you guys want to know how I study, there's links in this description below to the books I read, the poker sites I use. So check them out. Feel free. Let me know if you have any questions, and also let me know if you enjoy this type of content moving forward in videos. As always, subscribe, like the page, share it with your friends, and let me know in the comments what you think I can improve, what you'd like to see in the future. So thanks for watching.